Hello, welcome back to my studio. This is your instructor Linda, and this is part 2 of video workshop number 5 on sprigs. I apologize for having to split this video into 2 parts, but something had happened and I needed to interrupt the video to come back later to record the second part. So in the second part of this video, we're going to be doing the other 2 types of sprigs that can be done. And this one here is the reverse sprig, and this one here is the double reverse sprig. The reverse sprig and the double reverse sprig have a very similar looping pattern. The difference is, in the reverse sprig, you are using a single row comb, and in the double reverse sprig, you are using the double rowed comb. So like the other sprigs, let's begin by drawing the looping diagram of the sprig. So we'll do the single sprig, reverse sprig first, and we'll put the double there for later. Okay, so let's draw in our pins. This one is a single row, so we only need to draw 1 row of pins. 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's number it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's draw our number 0 pin right there. Okay, so you'll notice as we progress to the different types of sprigs that the looping pattern becomes more and more complicated. And it becomes more imperative for us to keep track of what pins that we're going around. Again, if it helps you, you can always draw the diagram, the looping diagram, on a paper so that when you're looping it around your pin, you know whether you're looping correctly or not. Okay? So all sprigs start by going through the number 0 and the number 1 pin. Okay? So in the reverse sprig, we want to skip 1 needle right here and go around the needle that is just above it. So we're going to go around needle number 2. Now here comes the complicated part. You need to loop around needle number 1 by going through this gap here between needle 1 and 2. Let me show you what I mean by drawing it. So here we go. We are going in between and coming back out. Kind of looks like a yin-yang symbol. Okay, so then you go back up and you go to the left side of the comb by going through the same spot as you entered the right previously. So here we are. We're going to skip that needle and we're going to go around the needle immediately above it. Okay, and then from the right hand side we will loop around the needle number 3 like a yin-yang symbol. So there we go. There's our looping pattern. Okay, so if we were to write down the numbers that we were looping, we would start by looping around pin number 2. So here's our first loop. We go back and wrap around number 1. The next one we would go and wrap around is number 4. And then backtracking to number 3. Okay, so can you see a pattern here? So it's going 2, 1, 4, 3, right? So the next one would be 6, and then we would pop back to 5, right? And then we would loop around number 8, and then loop back around number 7. And the pattern would continue like that till you finish your sprig. Okay, so wow, what a complicated looking design. Ironically, when I'm teaching this in my class, my students always seem to have bigger difficulties with the angled sprig than they do with the reverse sprig, which has the more complicated looping pattern. Go figure. I never did understand why that was. Okay, so here is your single comb. Let's grab a piece of paper. We leave a little tail there to grip, and we are going between comb teeth number 1 and number 2 and 0. Okay, so now here is pin number 2. We want to go around pin number 2, And see, here's pin number 1. We want to go from the back side and loop around pin number 1, like that. And you need to tuck it underneath the paper from when you loop to pin number 2. And then pull, right? Then you go back through that gap here that you use to go to the right-hand side of your comb. Okay. You skip this needle and you go up to comb number 4. Okay. And then you want to go from the back side and you want to loop around pin number 3. Okay. So if you've done this properly, all of your teeth should be covered. And the bumps on the loops should always be corresponding numbers, right? So on here, this side, we looped around 2, 4. The next one will be 6, 8, 10. On this side, the loops will be around pin number 1, number 3, number 5, and number 7. Okay, so follow along on this diagram. So let's continue to loop. And when looping reverse sprig, you do have to be mindful when you're tucking the paper underneath this pin right here, that you don't end up getting it snagged and torn. Okay, so I'm going to go and I'm going to finish at number 12, because that's a nice easy number for me to remember. And if we check this side of the comb and this side of the comb, we can see that we have a very even distribution with the bumps being the same distance apart. So now, like the others, we will glue down on the spine. Now this one here, because we don't have any of the teeth uncovered, it's a lot easier to glue because you're less likely to get it all over your comb. So here we go. And I'm going to see if I can pull this to the tip of the comb so that you can see the pattern a bit better. Okay, so that's probably a little hard to see, but it's looped around here, it's gone around pin number 2, and it's reversed to go back around the needle that is just below it. Then it goes up, down, so forward and back, right? Okay, so let's do the same thing on another comb. We're going to go between 0 and 1. We will loop around pin number 2, and from the back side, loop around pin number 1. Go through the same gap that we used to go to the anchor, axis side. Okay, we're looping around pin 4, then back to 3, to 6, and then back to 5, 8, and so forth till we get to pin number 12. Okay, so double check. It looks like all of our loops are symmetrical and even. Doesn't look like we've missed or skipped any needles, and we can now attach it down. Okay. All right, so let's grab our previous one and see if we can slide it off. So here is half of the quilling element for the reverse sprig. Okay, so let's put glue on the spine. Let's take the other one off of the comb. Hopefully it has dried properly and isn't going to fall to pieces. That looks like it glued okay. When I'm doing my class, whenever I hear grunts of frustration, I know it's usually because the glue is not dry and the sprig has fallen apart. Okay. So again, you can hold it together with your fingers till the spine dries, or you can use the clamps to dry for you. Okay, here we go. Right. So if you're using the smaller quilling needle, or sorry, quilling comb, you get much smaller sprigs, right? But still the same looping technique. If you're not familiar with quilling comb, I would recommend that you start off with the wide spacing instead of the narrow spacing. It'll make it a little bit easier for you to visualize the looping patterns and to get your elements around the needles without tearing or kinking. Okay, but whether it's the large one or the small one, the looping pattern is the same. Okay, so if we compare this sprig here to this sprig, let's compare apples to apples. You'll notice here that the fronds on this particular sprig is shorter, and this one is longer. And again, that has to do with the number of needles that we skip before we loop back to the same pattern. So let's put this to the side and let's draw another looping diagram of a reverse sprig where you have skipped needles. Okay, so let's put that there to dry. Okay, and let's put in our needles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's number them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we'll put in our number 0 right there. Okay, so if you thought this was tough, you need an aqua lung for this one. Okay, so again, all sprigs start by going through the gap between pin 0 and pin 1. In this one, we looped around pin number 2. So in this one, we're going to skip pin number 2 and we're going to go directly to pin number 3. So now we have two options here. When we're looping back, we can choose to loop back around pin number 2, or we can loop back around pin number 1. And depending on which pin you choose to loop on when you're coming from the back side, you will get a different looking sprig. This sprig here I got by looping around pin number 2. This sprig here I got by looping back around pin number 1. So the appearance of the sprig is slightly different. This one's got more of a full loop, and this one's got kind of a half wavy ocean wave kind of loop, right? So let's do this one by going around pin number 1. Okay, so then we go through here, and because we skipped a needle here, we want to make sure that we skip a needle here. So rather than going around pin number 5, we're going to go head up and we're going to go around pin number 6 and loop back to pin number 4. So here's your looping pattern. So if I was to write down the numbers of the pins, we would go pin number 3, loop back to pin number 1, number 6, and number 4. Okay, so what you'll notice that is this number and this number here are always different by 3. And this number here and this number here is always different by 3. So to get the next number in the sequence, you want to add 3 to the 6, and you would get 9. At this point in time, my students would often say, "Oh my God, math!" Yes, math. Unfortunately, there is no getting away from math in your life. You do have to learn it. Okay, so then to get the next pin in this series, we would add 3 to here, right? And we would get pin number 7. All right, so there we go. Shall I loop that for you to see? Here is the comb. We're going between pin number 0 and 1. We're going to loop up directly to pin number 3. And we're going to go from the back side and we're going to loop around pin number 1. Right? And then pin number 6. Back down to 4. Pin 9. Back down to 7. And let's finish at pin number 12 and loop back to pin number 10. So here we go. So what you'll notice about this is that you've got longer fronds or longer lobes on the comb when you're looking at the bumps, right? So here we go. Let's glue it down. Okay, so I'm doing this very quickly, so hopefully it doesn't pop apart on me. Okay, so if we compare the fronds or the individual leaves on this sprig versus this sprig, you can see this one's much shorter and each of the fronds on this one are longer. So the more pins that you skip before you do that first loop, the longer this little piece will be. Okay? So now let's go on to the final one that we're doing, which is related to reverse sprig, and that is double reverse sprig. So double reverse sprig has a very distinctive look. It's got kind of these square-shaped, kind of hammer-shaped leaves on the petals. Quite pleasing to look at, I think. Okay, so like the others, let's begin with a looping diagram. We need double row comb on this, so let's draw in 2 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, let's number it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can't stress enough looping diagrams if you need to keep track of your project. After you do this for a while, you won't need the looping diagrams anymore. You'll just kind of have an intuitive feel for it, and you'll know which loops look right when you're looping. But for now, let's use the looping diagrams. So here's number 0. Okay, so like all of the other sprigs, guess what? Where do we start? Going between 0 and 1. Okay. So we're going to swing over to the other side, and like in the single sprig, let's see if I can find that diagram here. Here we go. So like in the single sprig where we go through and we loop at pin number 2, that's what we're going to do here. We're going to loop to pin number 2, and we're going to go all the way to the far side of the comb and go around pin number 2 here. And then go in from the back side around pin number 1. So if you look at these 2 diagrams, it goes around pin number 2 and loops around pin number 1. Same deal here, except you've got 2 number 2 pins that you need to loop around. Okay, so then you go back up, go through the same gap, which you use to get to the other side of the comb. So skip 1 pin, so we'll go up to number 4. Around the other number 4 and back around the number 3, like this. So kind of a modified yin-yang pattern, kind of. So here we go. So that's what the double reverse sprig looks like. Okay, let's try it on the comb. Here we go. Let's grab a piece of paper. We will leave our little tail to hang on to the paper. We'll go through between pin number 0 and number 1. We're going to loop around pin number 2, directly go around completely to the other side. Whoops. Preferably don't let go of your project when you're doing this. Okay, so here we go. We've got pin number 2. And now we're going to circle around pin number 1, but it's not going to be the one on the left-hand side. It's going to be on the side of the axis, which is the number 1 pin on this side of the loop. Okay, so there we go. We're going to go through that space that we used to get to this side of the comb. And we're going to wrap around pin number 4. Go back around and curl around pin number 3 from the back side. Okay, so let's continue to loop. Let's see if I skipped any needles. Doesn't look like I have. Okay, so this one I'm going to go up to and finish needle number 12. There we go. So if I check this, looks like it's got even spacing between all of my loops. So all of these little bumps here should be the same size. If they're different sizes, then you've missed a needle or gone through the wrong needle. So here is the other side. It looks like it is the same pattern. Kind of reminds me of a zipper a little bit, doesn't it? Okay, so glue on each bump and along the stem. So all sprigs are finalized and glued that way by gluing the axis down. Okay, so let's leave that to the side and let it dry, and let's loop another one. Okay, here we go. So there's my tail. We're going to loop around both number 2s and loop around the number 1 pin on the axis side. So that's the right hand side if you're right-handed. Okay, and we're going to loop. There we go, and we're going to finish at pin number 12 because that's what I did on the other half of my sprig. Let's double check to make sure all the bumps or pieces are the same size and the same placement. So we're looking for symmetry here. If one of the pieces is longer and shorter, that means you've missed a comb somewhere. So kind of always do a visual inspection before you glue down the quilling element there. So here we go. All right. So let's leave that to dry. And I'm going to pull this one kind of to the top of the comb so that you can see the looping pattern. Okay, so here we go. So here's what the looping pattern looks like on that one, like this, right? So you can see the paper here goes around pin number 1 and 2, goes back around, also goes around this pin number 2, and then loops from the inside around pin number 1 on this side. Okay, so let's remove this off. I'm going to use my fingers this time instead of the comb. It is easier with the comb. But isn't that gorgeous? There we go. Let's see if we can get this off. Is it glued? Yep, doesn't look like anything's falling apart. Okay, so let's glue it on the spine right there on the axis, and so again, you can hold it with your fingers till it dries, or you can use the quilling clamps. Handy things, these quilling clamps, I love them. Okay, so this one, there we go. That is double reverse sprig. Okay, so if you've been following around and you've made it to this point, you probably know what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you a variation off of double reverse to get the wider spacings like I have in all of the other sprigs. Okay, so let's put that to the side. Here is our normal double reverse sprig. And here we go. So let's draw in the pins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, number it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so let's put in our pin 0 there, and let's start the looping diagram. Okay, so let's start. Easy part, we're going between pin number 0 and pin number 1 and looping to the other side. So in the standard one, you can see here, the regular size ones, I started looping at pin number 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip pin number 2 and we're going to directly go to pin number 3. So here we go, we'll loop around pin number 3, go around to the other side to the other pin number 3. So now at this point you have the option of looping down and going to pin number 2 or pin number 1. Okay, so when you do that, you will get different designs like that. And whether or not you loop around this pin here or that pin there will make a difference on how your project looks, right? Okay, so I'm going to show you another variation as well too on this looping diagram. And that is for this specific one right here. So this is the same as what we did on the single reverse sprig in order to get that longer lobe. Okay, so now we're going to loop it in a different diagram pattern. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Did I count right? Yep. Except I put my pins crooked. 5, 6, 7, 2. Does help, Linda, if you draw properly. Okay. So let's put in our starting pin at 0. Okay, so double reverse sprig. Here's another looping diagram. We go through pin number 0 and pin number 1 and around pin number 2. So the start is very similar to this loop right here. So we'll go around pin number 2 and around pin number 1. So far it looks very similar to this normal one here. But what we're going to do is, rather than going through the space that we use to get to the left or the right side of the comb, we're actually going to deliberately bypass that, and let's skip 2 needles. You can skip just 1 as well. And go through to the other side through a needle that is above this one. Okay, so we'll go around the 6. So here's 1, 2. This one's 5, 6. We're going to go around number 6 and number 5 like that. And then you can keep going. So in this case, we went from 2 to 5, which is a difference of 3 pins, right? So if you were to go from 6, you want a difference again of 3 pins, so you would loop to the bottom of pin number 9. So you can continue the pattern as such. Okay, so let's actually loop this one so that we get this, right? So we have a visual. And once you get used to counting the loops and keeping track of your threads, you can kind of get a general idea of where to loop when you're creating your own patterns. All of the quilling comb sprigs follow pretty much the same mathematical patterns. Okay, so let's, did I loop that properly? Yeah. Okay. All right, so here we go. Let's see if I can bring this to the top so you can see the looping pattern. So here we go. So you can see it's gone around these two, it's skipped two, gone around two, skipped two, gone around two, so that you get these bumps where it covers 2 needles, uncovers 2 needles, covers 2 needles, uncovers 2 needles. There we go. Now if I look at the other side, is the pattern the same? Yes, it looks like all of the bumps are the same size. And at this point in time, you can glue down your sprig. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Then we'll remove it. Okay. There we go. And voila. Okay. So I'm going to bring back this pattern. And that's the one where I've looped it to get the bigger lobes. And this is a rather long and complicated video. Yay for all of you that have managed to follow thus far. We are almost done. Okay, so we're going to go through 0 and 1. We're going to loop to pin number 3 and circle back around pin number 2. So according to this diagram, we're going to loop around 6 and go back around 4. Okay, let's continue the diagram. Okay. Oops. See, this is what happens when you pull too hard. You tear your paper. If this does happen when you're tearing your paper, then you want to kind of just glue it down. Okay. And you do need the paper to go down your entire spine. So I'm going to add kind of a piece of paper at the end. There we go. So it can be fixed if you do tear your paper, but do try and avoid tearing it. It just makes your life easier. Okay. So there we go. Let's remove that. So you can see it's got bigger lobes in comparison to this one, which has smaller lobes. Okay. And in this case, you would generally want to make 2. There are some occasions where you would make just 1 if you're using it to border or trim another quilling element, for example. But if you're making a sprig, you do need 2 of them. Okay, so let's take a deep breath. This is probably the longest and hardest video workshop that I've done so far. Congratulations to all of you who have made it to the end. What you will find is you probably will have to review this video a couple of times to kind of get a general grasp on how to loop, right? So thank you for joining me in this video, and we will see you in the next.